Most of the time when you meet someone, you're introduced to them by their first name. Sometimes at formal functions, or depending on the person's stature in society, you may be introduced to that person by their last name or title. In both cases, it is appropriate to remember the name given to you. When you see that person again in the future, refer to them by the name you were originally given. However, you may want to remember their full name. This is especially useful in business settings. Sending a formal letter requires the full name of a person in the address. Also, to research details about that person will require their full name. Does having the first and last name make the memory process harder? No. The process is exactly the same, but before you can memorize the full name, first you need to get it. Once you have been given the full name, you can use the process previously learned to remember the full name. In some circumstances, you will be introduced to a person by their full name, so you don't need to do anything extra. Say something like, "Hi, I'm Laura Hursfield," or "Pleased to meet you, I'm David Stanhope." Of course, as you have learned, you would immediately repeat the name back to them. In this case, with the full name given, repeating the full name aloud may come across as too formal. "I'm pleased to meet you, David Stanhope." Putting this response as a question makes this process less formal. "Was that David Stanhope?" Or "Did you say David Stanhope?" Another option is to repeat part of the name to yourself as you repeat the name back. "Great meeting you, David." In your mind, Stanhope. You will need to use your judgment based on the circumstances you're in at the time of being introduced. Always remember, be genuinely happy to meet them. That way, whichever way you choose to respond will come across as sincere and unlikely to offend the other person. If you are only given one name, it's simply a process of asking for the missing name. You can lead the process at the introduction by introducing yourself first by giving your full name. "Hi, I'm Nicholas Darvis." "And you are?" The person may follow your lead and give you their full name. Mission accomplished. In some cases, when the person returns the introduction, they may only give one of their names. The simplest way to respond to this situation is to politely ask for their other name. "Hi Laura, do you mind if I ask for your surname?" Most of the time the person will give it to you when asked. Sometimes a person may not want to share their name. It may be the case that the person likes their privacy and doesn't want to share their full name at this time, but there could also be other reasons. If another person doesn't want to give you their full name, it's usually best to respect their privacy in that moment. If you really want the person's name, there are many other ways to get it without a full frontal assault. It may be much simpler to ask someone else at the event who knows that person. The simple rule is, if you are not given the full name, ask politely for the part that is missing. If they prefer not to give their name to you, then leave that as it is for now. It comes down to, what do you want to remember the name for? Do you really need their full name? If not, then maybe choose to let it go and focus on the name you were given. Once you have been given the full name, you repeat the process previously learned using the full name. Ask them to repeat their full name, if appropriate, to make sure you have heard their name correctly. Immediately repeat the full name back to them. If the circumstances prohibit repeating the full name, repeat part of the name to yourself. Use the full name as much as possible throughout the conversation. Again, many of the times this may be silently to yourself. Take notice of the key features of the person's face and make a visual cue to yourself which reminds you of their name. Instead of one name, you are using both names. For example, Laura Hursfield. Her key facial features may be the distance between her eyes, and you picture large L-shaped borers, Laura, tunneling between her eyes, and then a hearse drives through into a field inside her head. Now you have a moving set of images that help remember both names, which strengthens the reinforcement process. The key here is to make a set of images that links both names together to the person's face. Talking to David Stanhope, you may notice his long nose and imagine David from the Bible standing on the edge of his nose, hoping for God. This may seem ridiculous, as David from the Bible would have more faith, but the more absurd you make the image, the more likely it will become a long-term memory. Say the name as you depart. Again, you may say part of the name to yourself. Regularly remind yourself of the name until it becomes a long-term memory.